Alright, the T26 has cured the sealant on the cylinder liner, so it's time to put the piston and everything back on. So I'm gonna pop the head back off. Alright, head off, the rods are in place, keep our 4 bolts aside. There's our piston. I very gently put that on some fine oiled sandpaper to knock off any of the tall scores, but it's still pretty badly scraped up there, so I don't know how long this piston will last, but we will cross that bridge when we get to it. That's another one of the good reasons these things are put together with aluminum pistons and steel liners, because then you get to control the wear happens mostly on the piston, which is easily replaceable. So put a dab of oil on everything as we assemble here. Actually, push that back the other way and put a dab on this side of that wrist pin too. Make sure it's really getting in there. Drop this. Now, decide which way up I want this to go. I think I'll have the scores on the top. And there we go. Why is it not dropping right in? Oh. Head gasket. The head gasket is not quite centered on there. Well, I don't really want to. There we go. Pushed in and past there now. And I missed the... There we go. Turn that way, and... Oh, it still doesn't want to fall in there. Okay. Reach in this and push the piston backwards. There, okay. Now, there we go. Finally got it to hit on the journal there. And then I didn't hold it in place. Such a pesky little thing. All right. There. Now we got that in place. Make sure and put oil all over. Ah. There we are. Started, and more oil all over that before it gets final assembled. So I definitely don't need to accidentally get any of the stuff together dry, since this engine already has okay. There we go. Alright. Put another few drops in the top of the cylinder here. Make sure that's on the side. Make sure that I get on the bearings that are in the side of the housing from the inside. And this is going to get filled with oil anyway, but make sure we directly apply some in there before we finish things up. So oil plug. Back panel here, which I'm going to seal again so that I throw everything on the ground. Remember, there's two lengths of screws on this back plate because the top ones are longer to accommodate the fuel tank. So, bottom one's first, snugged in, fuel tank, top one's snug in, and then that will seal in 24 hours and hold all whatever liquid goes in the bottom there. Hopefully after this it will only be oil and there won't be any water leaking out of this hopper. So trying to put these in centered. And feel them when they go into the cups in the bottom end there. And oh, come on. There. Last head bolt lined in. Alright. Those cups are in place. Cool. All right. The clearance on these two has changed, so I must have swapped those rods back and forth, so I'll have to adjust that. But because if I hadn't hit the cup at the bottom end here, then these would be pushing way too far open, completely punching things open. But I'll find a screwdriver and adjust those, and then we'll put this back in the tractor. Alright, time to put the engine back on the T26. So, put the fuel line on to kind of keep it out of the way, and I adjusted those valve tappets, and I'm not going to put the valve cover on right away, I don't think. I'm going to set it and its very tiny nut aside. And I'm not going to put the cover back in because I would like to be able to watch the water reservoir more initially while we test here. So, and inspecting in there looks pretty good there. So, get the tractor over here, and there's this the ignition sensor needs to get into the wait. Yeah, no, this goes on that way. There. To slide the engine over the steering thing. And then I need to get tweezers to push the sensor up into its holder so that the ignition will work. And that's set in there now. There, found the first hole. And now we just have to get the other 3 short bolts in for the front brackets. And not putting anything tight right now. That I was gonna do a silly trick there. Go. Wiggle that around so that those are in. And now the back side we've got, can't hold that up, these 2 spacers and these 2 big bolts from the bottom. So okay, so one spacer on the forceps goes in there, and then the bolt comes in from the bottom. And because those front ones are still loose, we can just get that in place. And since I'm on the bottom here, I do oil the gearbox regularly, and of course it's got a big opening in the bottom, so it runs right out the bottom. But Those are all brass square cut gears in that gearbox, as we've seen, so make sure that it's got plenty of lubrication all the time. Same thing on this side. Drop the spacer in, poke the bolt through it, and then just gently wiggle things around as we slowly start things. And now now we've got everything in place. We can tighten these down. So those got tightened on the back. Tighten the ones on the front. Snugged. Alright. And then we can get the fuel line out of the way, because now it's time to get our throttle linkage back in. This has to go in and the outside of the throttle, or the, okay, that's right, I popped this off the side of the engine because with the intake in place you can't get this while the engine is on the tractor. So pop the intake off, then we have room for this, and linkage goes around the fuel line on the outside, and then it has to go behind the steering rod, or steering shaft there from the, or steering column. Alright. And it's catching on the oh, come on, you. There we go. There. Slide it in, pop that there. Got two long screws for the linkage on the side of the engine here. And then the pair of screws that do the other two ends. This is the longer one of these two, goes in the throttle linkage on the back here, and tighten and then loosen a tiny bit so that we get free movement on that end. And when you're doing this, make sure that this throttle clamp is open so that you can actually move things and feel that it's moving. And this O-ring has popped off again. Intake back in place. Short screw on this end. Tighten and then backed off a little bit. There we go. Alright. So, like I said, I'm going to leave the top off the hopper so I can inspect it more thoroughly, and I'm going to leave the head off, or the valve cover off the head, just so that I can keep an eye on that while it runs for a little bit. But for now, we'll let this set and cure the backside, and then we'll fill it with oil and try it out. Hopefully we won't have that leak anymore.